Hey homeschool friends, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be taking you on a bit of a week in our life when it comes to our Sonlight homeschool curriculum. And so I'm constantly getting questions about how long does it take? Like, what are some good expectations for reading all the books that come in the Sonlight HBLs and science curriculum? And that's what we're going to be doing. Is I'm going to be taking you through a week. I think I'm planning on doing kind of a middle of the year week to give you a good idea of how it feels to read all the books for Sonlight's HBL-B as well as Sonlight's Science B, because those are the programs we are using this year. And so I thought it would be helpful, especially this time of year when everybody is looking at curriculum for next year, to maybe give you a better idea of the Sonlight HBL-B and the Science B programs. So let's just get into it. I'm going to flip the camera around and I'm going to show you kind of top down on all the different resources as well as the instructor's guide. And then I'll plan on overlaying a bit of video showing my kids and I as we go through this program. So stay tuned if you're at all interested in seeing a bit more detail into these programs. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to the channel if you're new here, or welcome back if you've been coming for a while. Like I said, we are going to be going through a week of the Sonlight HBL-B and the Science B programs. So I'm going to flip the camera around and I will show you a typical week in our Sonlight program. So hey guys, so I flipped you around, obviously, and I have all the resources I want to show you. I have the instructor's guide for week 19. I decided halfway through the year, this is the week we used right when we came back from Christmas break, early January. And then I have my big stack of books, the books we were using at that time. I mean, there's more Sonlight books for some of the other weeks, but these were the ones that we were using during that week. So I'm going to show you all of that. So the first thing I do want to show you, though, is the instructor's guide. So I do have two instructor's guides here. I have the history instructor guide here, and then I have the science one here. And so let me just take you quickly through these as we look at the books. And so for me, personally, when I look at these instructor guides, I don't necessarily just go vertically and I don't necessarily go horizontally. I just kind of do what works for us, but really my goal is to have the grid completed throughout the week. And so sometimes we will get ahead, sometimes we'll get behind, but I try to aim to stay on pretty much the same schedule, and it works for us. So for here in this first day for history, Bible, and literature, it starts off with this book of the Leading Little Ones to God. Okay, I realized I didn't even bring that over, so I had a few more books to collect. No big deal. But here is the book, Leading Little Ones to God. And so I have been talking a lot about this book this year in my monthly updates, which I'll link the playlist up above for those updates so you can see how it's been going throughout the year. But this book has surprised me. It went from one I wasn't sure about to like pretty much our favorite book. And the reason I wasn't sure about it is it looks so old-fashioned. Now, that's just me judging a book by its cover. So let's look through here. So we were doing lesson 42 on this day, and lesson 42 is called Jesus Shows Himself to His Friends. And so I just want to show you about how much reading that is for your kiddos at these ages. It really isn't that much. When it comes to some of these extra things, it'll say something to talk about, memory verse, suggested readings, prayer. We rarely do that. We usually just read it and talk about it ourselves, and then we are doing a memory verse for Sonlight anyway. So that is the first thing we will do, is we'll read our Leading Little Ones to God as well as the reading from the Bible. And so I just always pull out the children's Bible. We got this for my son years back, and they like it just because it has like colored pictures and things like that. And so we would pull out John 21 verse 1 through 8. Okay, so I'm sure you guys can kind of imagine how much that is, but it's John 21 verse 1 through 8. Yes, I had to double check. And so that's reading through here up to here in the Bible. And these ones are nice. Sometimes my kids don't totally get it, but a lot of times it's linked to what we were reading here, and we can kind of see that, and I really like that. And so that's the Bible reading, and then it comes to the memorization and the CD for memorizing. The CD we don't use regularly, but I do kind of stick it in for them to listen to the whole thing all at once, or we'll put it in the van, things like that. At this time we were memorizing Psalm 23, and we were going through verse 1 through 4. So this was the week we were adding verse 4. So in the previous 3 weeks we had worked on verses 1 through 3, and then on week 19 we were adding verse 4. You guys, this was their favorite verse to memorize or psalm to memorize was Psalm 23. They're still constantly reciting this one, which is just really neat. And so, all right, so we did that, and then it comes to Around the World with Kate and Mac. So this is a really sweet book that has to do with the Bible being translated into all different languages around the world, and languages A to Z, and we just work through them. And this week we were on M, so this was the Marma in Bangladesh, and so we would read a bit about it. We'd read about their particular people group as well as kind of their history with Bible translation. Have they had a copy? Are they in the process of getting a copy, and things like that? And then the rest of the book, or the rest of the spread, tends to just be kind of fun facts and a map. So I just really do love how Sonlight is constantly bringing in the geography, even within the Bible section, or I guess this was the history section. So the geography is in the history. So that was Around the World with Kate and Mac. And then the Usborne Book of World History was that first day. And we were doing pages 74 to 75. All right, and this is right here, the Great Civilizations in the East. Oh, and this was talking about China and the Great Wall. So this is a 2-page spread in this Usborne book. It's a pretty standard Usborne book, but we really do enjoy kind of the little snippets. There's always kind of little things to focus on, and you kind of look at that, and then you look at this, and it really works for my kids. So this was that first day of the week to look at that for history. And then it does mention the fact that there is an optional hands-on history kit of the dragon puppet, which I love the hands-on history kits. I'm not crafty, but my kids are. And I actually did recently make a review video on my thoughts on those, so I'll link that above as well. Okay, then you get into the literature section, and there's always poetry. It's 1 page, so page 94. And this one happened to be about dolphins. And so I would read the poem, we'd chat about it, see if they liked it. It really, we don't spend a ton of time on poetry. I just love exposing them to it. And then for our read aloud for this section of weeks, we were working through the Greek myths. And so this was a little different than our normal read aloud, which is usually a chapter book. But this was really fun, and the kids did like it because it just kind of gave context to a lot of the different stories they've heard referenced in other books or TV shows and things like that. And so we were reading 2 stories. It looked like we were reading page 85. We were reading this one. Oh, they liked this one. This was the Chariot of the Sun. We did that one, and then 117, Theseus and the Monitor. So, I mean, that just gives you an example of how much reading is involved. Again, was a pretty quick story, so there was just 2 stories for that day. So I'd say about mid-year, that's pretty representative of how much we would read in, say, a read aloud. Okay, so that's just the first day. And then to look at the whole week, though, it kind of follows a very similar pattern. So typically, day 1 and 3, you have both a lesson from Leading Little Ones to God as well as some Bible reading. But on the opposite days, you have just Bible reading, and you continue to work on your memorization. So sometimes these days are lighter or shorter, but it really also depends on then what follows down here. Because on those other days, there's no Kate and Mac. It just has the Usborne World History on these 2 days, as well as a child's history of the world. So these days, whenever you have a child's history of the world, it is a bit longer because this book has bigger chapters. So let's just look at it. Chapter 22. And so this one was called Rich Man, Poor Man. And so you can see about how much reading it is. It's more reading than, say, the Usborne book. And so it takes a little bit more time, and it takes your kids paying a bit more attention. And then it finishes out with here. But my kids have really liked this book. The stories are really engaging, and it's just really fun to see history come alive through this book. So they've really liked it. It surprised me. At first I thought it was going to be too long, like they wouldn't be able to focus. Sometimes it is, but other times it's a real joy, and they really enjoy it. So that's some of the history going on. And then to see here, you read a few more days of poetry and a few more Greek myths, and that finishes out your week. And like I said, sometimes we'll just sit at the table and we'll go through a bunch of these books. And we're often at the table because it's snack time. And then other times we're at the couch, which oftentimes it's more of the read aloud. And I don't think I did it too much for Greek myths, but for example, right now we're reading like Detectives and Togas, which is a much thicker chapter book, and we're constantly on the couch for that. And so it just really depends on how things are going as to where we are schooling. But that's kind of how I have it. And as you can see, I also just mark off all the dates That's just for me. Sometimes we do end up skipping some things, like we just didn't get to the Bible reading that day for whatever reason, and I'll just put an X through it, and other times I'll just date when we did it. So that's History, Bible, Literature B. But then we also do Science B, like I was saying, and Science B looks like this, and so it's a little less involved. It's only one subject, and the way we have it set up, we actually have the 5-day science program because I love science, and we have the 4-day HBL. So I just do it differently, and that's fine because I really like having these extra books, which I'll show you in just a second. So if you're looking about how much reading there is, at this time we were just starting the Usborne World of Animals. And this was a really beautiful book. Okay, so on day 1, we were going through this spread. We were doing pages 14 to 17. And so it was talking about how animals see and hear, as well as smell, touch, and taste. And so they enjoyed that. And then they enjoyed also going to the activity sheets, because you could see the assignments there, and then the activity sheets are here. And I don't have the activity sheets. I apologize. I didn't think to keep those. But what I do love is that Sonlight includes answer keys. I don't often need them, and you probably won't either, but it is nice to have them. Like, so for example, that first day with what I just showed you, we were supposed to go over questions 1 through 3. And so here's 1, 2, 3. So it was really this first page where we would go through, and sometimes it was matching. Sometimes they'd have to tell me what they heard. Like the question was, how can an animal use its whiskers to avoid getting stuck? And then here it says, what 3 things can antennae sense? And it's touch, smell, and taste. And so we would go through that. And like I've said in multiple videos, I don't give these sheets to my kids. I just say them out loud and we work on them together. And it's just a fun way to review what we've heard. And sometimes I won't even use those, and we'll just kind of talk about the interesting animals. Or sometimes we'll use the links for the internet linked site, and we'll get to view more animal stuff. So that's really fun. All right, so that's a typical day. What I didn't show you though was they do have some optional things here, some do-togethers. We rarely do these, but sometimes we do. I like to look at them just to see if we can fit it into our day easily. But it's often just like extra research or extra documentaries, or go look this thing up. Like it, for instance, talked about the 5 senses. And this says it would be fun to test your students in their 5 senses, and then it gives some ideas for how to do that. But then if you keep looking across here, it says that we're going to be in the animal book and finishing the activity sheets from the animal book pretty much the first 3 days. And then for the 5-day, it always has the experiment here on like the 4th day, I guess. And we love that. I feel like I've gotten back into the experiments, and we've done almost all of them since January, and it's been really fun. And this one says, how can I carry something safely? Okay, and so I pulled out our instructions. Sorry, I'll zoom back out. So this is the 2nd grade science experiment book, and my kids really enjoyed this one. And so this, like I said, is how can I carry something safely? And so what you basically do is you collect the materials. Oftentimes it's stuff from the kit, and they'll mention that if it's from the kit. And then you read this. You read the introduction. Either you read it yourself and paraphrase it, or you can just directly read the introduction. And it's talking about these tribes that live in remote villages kind of on top of cliffs, and how do they get around? And they get around on these ladders. And then it's like, well, how do these kids get to school? And so it's talking about how you would devise a solution to help these kids as they're climbing up and down from school. And how can they carry things if they need all their hands to climb the ladder? What do they have, and what can they use to carry things up and down? And it's a lot of problem solving and experiment design and engineering, and so it's just really fun. And you get to talk about like pulley systems, and then you can kind of conclude it all with some bigger picture things of what they were able to accomplish. And so anyway, that is one example of an experiment, and you just use the stuff that came in the kit and your book, and it's really fun. And then, like I also said, I like to do the 5-day program. And so it says here, see how it's made was something we were going through at that time, and we were near the end of the book, I think. So page 82 to 85. Oh, that was a fun one. We were learning about crayons and how our crayons made. And so it has the whole spread, and then it takes you through it kind of stepwise and gives you timing and all the pigment information. So My kids really enjoyed this. I'd be curious to see if this was one of their favorite science books from the year, because I'm guessing it will be, because they love that and they still pull it out to look at it all the time. And then sometimes it will have little notes on the instructor's guides to just talk a little bit more about what's going on in the books. And in this case, like, it talks about millions of years, and it refers you to the article that Sonlight wrote about evolution and the age of the earth, which I've talked about on this channel before as well. And then I forgot to mention that same is for the HBL instructor's guide, is it has questions to ask, but also information. And a lot of times we would go through these directly, or we would kind of paraphrase them, and it also stops you for when we were adding things to our timeline book. And so that you can actually see there was a timeline figure here on the first one when I showed you the book with the Great Wall of China. So we would put that in our timeline book, as well as look on the map, either the big map or the map that came with the instructor's guide. And so I hope that was a helpful little glimpse into really how we do things and how Sonlight works. So I'm going to flip the camera back around and end the video. Welcome back, guys. So I hope that was helpful. I hope it was fun to see inside all the books. I love that personally whenever I watch any review type videos, as I love seeing inside the resources, as well as I love wrapping my head around how the program is set up. And so I hope that answered some questions. Please let me know down below if you have any additional questions. I'm happy to help you understand how best to use the program. And I don't think I said this at the beginning of the video, and I really should have. I should have said my kids' ages. So when we started this program back last summer, my son was 8.5 and my daughter had just turned 7, and we're about to finish it, and he has turned 9 and she's almost 8. So kind of in those ranges, and I think it was like the perfect age range. So anyway, that is what I have for this video. I hope it was helpful. If it was, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you want to, and otherwise, guys, I will see you in the next homeschool video. All right, take care.